Hi everybody, welcome to Leon's Chainsaw Parts and Repair. I'm going to fire this thing back up and show you guys what it's doing, and then we'll tear into it and figure out what's going on. Okay, I'm not going to say that I know for certain what's going on, but I got a pretty good idea. This is Hal's. I think this is one that I haven't looked at previously. So he had said, hey, you know, when I'm running it, it's dying when you tilt it forward. And I can see that. I can see what it's doing, but the assumption was that there's bad crank seals, and that was a good assumption to make initially, but this thing's not tuning at all properly. Saw how it kept belching a lot of smoke every time I pulled the trigger. So I started leaning out the low speed. It was set at about 1.5, which is where it should be running on a normal functioning proper carburetor. Right now, where it was idling right there, 100% closed. The low speed screw is 100% closed right now, and it would idle. So there's something else going on. My guess is there's something in the circuit plate gasket. My guess is the wrong one is in there, but I don't know. So let's take it apart and let's find out. Because I was trying to do that die out, even though I had that closed, and you tilt it back and it would immediately belch a big old puff of smoke. So fuel was getting by where fuel should not be getting by. And this guy, that's bar oil. Bar oiler is apparently working overtime on this saw. It's one risk. You run it without a bar for very long and it'll put a coating of crap in here. But since we're going to have this apart, I guess we might as well clean it up. I'm really interested in what we're going to find in this carburetor. Say, if I'm gambling, I'm going to gamble on the circuit plate issue. Because it didn't flood to beat hell when I turned the saw off to fire up the video camera there. And if it was a leaking inlet needle, I would think it would have. That plug is black as black. She's been running too rich. And this muffler's probably going to be hot. But it was important to demonstrate what it was doing, because that's our only real clue as to where to take the repair. Oh yeah, that some bitch needs cleaned out in a bad way. Okay. When you're taking loose a fuel line, you want to crack your cap. Now this, some people swear by this damn gray line. but that has belled out to where it slips on and off the carb bar awful easily. I'm going to replace that too. Well, this is apart. I'm not at all happy with that. All right, let's get into this cart. Now, there is a lot of residual fuel down in here. A lot of residual fuel. So it could well be leaking past that inlet needle too. But we know our reed valve is good because that's sitting nice and flat. So, go blow this thing apart, blow it off, excuse me, and then we'll take it apart. Maybe in a little bit.
He said maybe in a little bit. Oh my
gosh. Okay. I haven't let those little twerps have a play date for a while, so I probably will after we get this carb figured out. Alright, now so far everything on this side looks pretty good.
Even parents said yes, we can have a play.
That's great. I'm doing a video. Can you just wait a few minutes? Thank you.
Okay.
Alright. That side looks pretty good. But then I would expect it to. What I'm going to do now is get out the gauge and we're going to put some pressure to it. Because as I was blowing that off, I was getting an awful lot of fuel coming out of that carburetor into my hand. And that's not right. Shouldn't be doing that. As I thought. Look at that. I actually see, look, and look at all that gas. Look at all that. No, no, no. That's not how we do things here. All right. Let's find out what's going on under here. All right. I'm not going to say that I found the only problem, but I found the first problem. So this is how it came apart. Diaphragm looks good. It's on the wrong side of the gasket. Diaphragm goes above the gasket. So that's problem number one. Get away from me, bug. Let's see if it'll hold a little better now. We know it's leaking around that gasket. Way more than I'm going to allow it to. But it's also still leaking past the needle here. I can see little bubbles of fuel coming up. So, bare minimum, we've got a problem with the needle, and that gasket is going to need some gasket sealer on it to slow that down. needle doesn't look terrible, which is odd. And the proper circuit plate gasket is there. You've got the one feed hole. So we're using the Z-shaped gasket. That's all correct. So that means it was building enough pressure to just, as the engine would warm up, to just completely overwhelm the spring here. The seat, from what I can see of it, doesn't look bad. Now, these aren't serviceable on an HDC. That needle doesn't look bad. So I'm going to give this spring my famous stretch. And ought to add a couple PSI of resistance. And that spring fell forward underneath the circuit plate, so we'll just do that whole process over again. At least this is a captured lever. If it was loose, then we'd really be having some fun. Spring is hell-bent on fighting with me. And you sucker. Okay, I can work with that. Can't work with that. Ah, yeah. You know, sometimes. Damn you. Come on. Tell you folks, sometimes. Right. Come on, damn it. Yeah, this is the second HDC carburetor I've been in today that was an annoyance. And it shouldn't be an annoyance to just get one of those stupid little screws started, but somehow it has been. And cross-threading one of those little chumps is not a good idea. Alright, that's good and tight enough. Obviously that gasket is still leaking like a sieve. In my experience, just tightening it down isn't going to do short. Yeah, still got a good slow leak, but I think that's just the gasket at this point. That thing is really porous. And the closer it gets to 3, the more it slows down. So I'm good and certain that we got this taken care of on the needle side here. But the way to tell, you need a little more liquid in there. And unless I'm mistaken, there ain't a bubble coming up. I think you guys can see in there. Yep. Yep. We got it there, so it's on the gasket. See, that's a common, I mean, look at that. That's ridiculous. Talk about a shitty gasket material. So, that's going to get some gasket sealer. I've shown that, what I've been using in other videos, but I'll pull it out again. I'm going to let this gasket dry in the sun and evaporate out any fuel before I do it. But this stuff, Permatex, works pretty well. I won't say it 100% stops it, but it slows it really a lot. So I've been almost making it a standard procedure to coat these fuel pump side gaskets with that stuff when I'm installing them new, because it's annoying to get it all together and find that kind of a leak. But with that leaking needle and with the diaphragm and gasket here being reversed, I'm pretty certain that's what was causing the tuning issues. And I think the fact that it was dying when it was tilted in one direction or the other, I don't really think it had anything to do with crank seals on this particular saw, because the end play is still well within spec there, and there's absolutely no up and down movement. So we'll see. To be continued. Okay, so it's the next day. Got this thing back together. I've already run it and I've tuned it. It is warmed up. It is at operating temp. I mean, it's not at the temp it would be if it was cutting hard, but yeah, let me show you how it's running and then I'll tell you how I got it there. Okay, you can tell by the puddle of oil I got here, I ran this thing quite a bit. It's because Hal and I have talked about this saw a couple of times, and we both, based on what he was describing, had come to the conclusion that the sucker had bad crank seals. But that's not the case. But I want to be damn certain of that, you know, before I send it back to him. So here's what happened. Got that carb back together and started tuning it. And of course it was way out of tune. No big surprise there. I mean, I had that low speed closed right off. The high speed was set too rich because it was kind of sort of compensating for that. But really, that needle not seating was allowing fuel to flood in there and just overwhelm the entire circuit system. And that's what was allowing that mixture needle, the low-speed needle, to be closed, and the damn thing would still idle. But that's so jacked up in the way that was running. So, as I started retuning this thing, initially, I could get it set right here, let it idle, but I could hear the idle coming down, so I knew it was too rich. And if I tilted forward, the idle speed would go up a little bit, and if I tilted back, it would go down a little bit. Well, yeah, traditionally that can be a sign of bad crank seals. But when I'd level it back out, set it on the bench, rev it up, I was getting a blast of smoke. Okay, too rich. That's the dead giveaway there. If you had a bad crank seal, she'd be running lean. You wouldn't be getting that smoke. That just wouldn't be happening. So I just kept fine-tuning this, and we're talking a screwdriver's width of a turn at a time. Clear it out, let it idle for a second, do the tip test. It took, I'd say, 6 adjustments before I got this tuned exactly where I like it on this mix. How's mix? It ain't going to be the same. This is 50-1 with that Steel HP Ultra. I honestly don't remember what mix Hal's running. I know he's told me, but I don't remember. And therefore, if he's doing a 40-1, probably going to have to richen this up just a smidge. Just a tiny smidge. Like, again, a screwdriver's width. But you won't know, how you won't know until you run it. I'm comfortable that on this mix it's tuned perfectly and that it is not bad crank seals. We did the tip test side to side, speed wasn't changing. It's a touchy little carburetor. Some of these HDCs are. And I have to think it's the relationship on that little inlet needle to lever to height. Each one's going to be a little bit different. Blew that glove out. So anyhow, I'm going to let this thing sit, and I'll do a cold start again just to make sure that everything sounds and feels right. But I'd say I'm 99.5% certain that the carburetor issues were the problem.